Welcome to Immortal Works Flash Fiction Friday, Episode 68, Henry the Last, by Melissa Meibos, read by John Grundvig. The end of the world started with a 3-year-old boy named Henry. Henry snuck out of his home, much to the dismay of his frazzled mother, who was desperately trying to get Henry's little brother down for a nap. It took her several minutes of frantic searching to discover the garage door had been left ajar by her sneaky ninja child, but by then it was too late. Henry wandered down the street to his neighbor's house, where he found a black, full-size basketball lying in the gutter. It was a rather large ball for such a small boy, but that didn't stop him from hefting it in his arms and attempting to make a basket in the hoop in his neighbor's driveway. The ball sailed up a mere foot or two before coming back down right on Henry's head. As he ran home, crying and holding his bonked noggin, the ball bounced into the street and rolled down the road, helped along by a rather insistent wind that wasn't strong enough to move much of anything except a faded black basketball that had already begun moving. The ball rolled merrily past several houses and empty driveways until it came to a stop in the middle of an intersection, disguised quite cleverly by the dark gray color of the aging road. The driver of the mosquito abatement truck didn't see it until he was nearly on top of it. He swerved to avoid running over the ball, but in his haste didn't realize exactly what he was swerving towards. His truck, freshly filled with chemicals to be sprayed to keep pesky bloodsuckers at bay, slammed into the side of a trailer filled with custom-blended fertilizer. The collision caused the tanks on both trucks to spring a leak, their respective cargoes mingling happily in a shallow puddle on the road. This in itself would have been a harmless incident, easily remedied by the local police and fire departments, along with a bare-bones hazmat crew. Unfortunately, before anyone could stop it from happening, a pickup truck headed to a farmer's market drove through the spilled liquids, sending them flying through the air and sprinkling his freshly picked fruits and vegetables. The farmer, of course, was oblivious because he was trying to read a text from his frazzled sister, who couldn't find her escape artist 3-year-old son, Henry, again. The farmer continued on his merry way, unaware that in his distracted state, the chemical mixture he'd inadvertently coated his prize-winning tomatoes in was reacting to his family's secret recipe growth serum that made his vegetables the biggest and plumpest in all of the 4 surrounding counties. All natural ingredients, of course. Wink, wink. The resulting blend mingled together, mutating and morphing into something rather sinister and dark. If he noticed anything amiss while setting up his booth at the local farmer's market, the farmer dismissed it as a flight of fancy or foolishness. After all, he'd sold hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of vegetables in the same way without incident. Besides, he thought, as he popped a plump cherry tomato from one of his free sample baskets into his mouth and chewed, he was set up closer to the booth demonstrating herbal charcoal masks than he liked, and the resulting odor was messing with his head. What he didn't know, however, was that the lemon mint charcoal masks were not responsible for the mild confusion and disorientation he began to feel mere minutes later. Nor were they causing the mild hallucinations he experienced as dozens of passing customers sampled his wares. All he knew was that the fluffy white sheep in the blue sky looked like they were due for a shearing. The farmer stood up from his stool and left his booth, stumbling slightly as the crowd jostled about him. The movement caused his stomach to seize, and he let out a loud and very satisfying belch, right in front of a group of teenage boys. The tallest of the bunch waved his hand in front of his face in an effort to disperse the odor and accompanying micro-droplets, but he only succeeded in spreading them further. One of his friends pointed to the newly vacated booth, and the group fell upon the unattended free samples, devouring as many as they could, as only teenage boys could. The ruckus they caused as the woman demonstrating the charcoal masks yelled at them to leave drew the attention of everyone except the baby boy, who at the age of 16 months was far too young to understand the implications of a man climbing up a cell tower with scissors in hand, trying to snip at the clouds in the sky. The baby boy giggled in delight as the strange man reached a little too far, lost his grip, and tumbled to the ground below, never to move again. After eating more vegetables in 5 minutes than they had in the past year, the teenage boys dashed off to celebrate their crime, snagging a couple of free cookies from a German baker's booth. They laughed and joked around as they pedaled their bikes towards their usual hangout on the pier at the reservoir. By the time they pulled their bikes to a stop, their stomachs were clenched so tight they could barely walk. Burping and belching eased the pain a bit, but it did nothing to stop the snipers they could suddenly see hiding behind every bush, or the unicorn one of them claimed was riding the wave runner on the water. The tallest boy crawled to the edge of the pier and emptied the contents of his stomach into the water, moaning in relief as he collapsed on the splintered wooden surface. His relief lasted only until he looked down at the surface of the water and spied a beautiful mermaid gesturing at him to join her. None of the other boys missed their friend, although a couple halfway registered the splash when the boy hit the water. They were too busy setting up recon to surround the snipers and unicorn and scope out their intentions. After all, if the town was being attacked by brain-sucking, form-changing aliens, shouldn't the police have all the details? Things quickly spiraled after that. The toxic mixture that had percolated in the boy's stomach before he'd vomited the mess into the town reservoir seeped its way past all filters and through the town's water supply. Those who hadn't been affected by the infected cherry tomatoes and fresh green beans offered by the now-deceased farmer at the farmer's market, or by the sprayed droplets burped out by those who had been affected, drank in the neurotoxin when they sucked down a cold glass of water or homemade lemonade to beat the heat of the late summer sun. Or it permeated their skin as they walked through the misters at the splash pad at the park, while their young ones first jubilantly danced, then slowly sank into the spraying and collected water, unobserved by their now oblivious parents. The neurotoxin passed through one person to the next, morphing and adapting, almost taking on a life of its own. Its molecules bonded with the water molecules on the ground and in the air, allowing it to travel far beyond the town's borders and into the world where it convinced nearly every mind it touched that fantasy and reality were indistinguishable and inseparable. Millions and then billions fell to the visions they saw only in their minds, succumbing in peaceful bliss as their organs shut down one by one. That is, if they didn't fall to their deaths or electrocute themselves while trying to dissect a light socket to see how it worked. Only the very young and those who already lived in a state of fantastical thinking were spared from the epidemic. When the neurotoxin finally settled down to rest, the world was in ruins. And a 3-year-old boy named Henry sat down next to his neighbor's basketball hoop, put his face in his hands, and cried because no one would wake up to play basketball with him. Thanks for listening to Flash Fiction Friday. If you have a submission, please send it to submissions@immortal-works.com.